Hey guys, Chris here from Apartment 417 and welcome back to the channel. You know, today's an exciting day because we're going to be doing our first video in which we break down our recordings and kind of talk about how we went about in recording it and mixing it and that whole process. So it's really exciting, and for our first song, we decided that we'd do our most recent cover of Home by Phil Phillips. Okay, so just jumping into the project right away, you can see that it's not very complicated. Just a couple of vocals, a bass track, an acoustic guitar, and that's really it. And that's, you know, if you've seen all of our videos, that's kind of the vibe we're going for. We are in an apartment, so we have to be quiet with most of the stuff that we're doing. But anyway, let's just take a listen to this and see what we're working with right now.
Settle down, it'll all be clear. Don't pay no mind to the demons, they fill you with fear.
Okay, so that's that. Like I said, real simple, nothing too crazy. But I want to kind of get into the nitty gritty with how we did these certain things to kind of make the mix sound more full and make it sound larger than it really is. So I'm going to start with the bass. So we got two bass tracks here. We have our bass sum and our bass distortion tracks. Now the bass sum, when I initially recorded the bass, we put two microphones on it. We had a 47 kind of in front of the F hole of the bass, or of the upright bass, and we had the Lewitt right here, the 240 on the neck. And what I did was I recorded them separately and then summed them together when I compressed them on the way in using the Warm Audio WA2A. That way I can just have a single bass track and didn't have to worry about having multiple tracks later on. So that's what the bass sum track is. Alongside the bass sum track, we have our bass distortion. Now this is something that I added later on because I felt like the bass itself was just not really cutting through the mix that much. You had a lot of great low end, but you just didn't really get that string noise that you would get from an upright bass. So let me play you the bass sum track first on its own. Okay, so it doesn't sound too bad, but the problem is when I play it with everything else, it kind of gets lost a little bit. Take a listen.
Settle down, it'll all be clear.
You can hear it, you can feel the low end, but you're just not really hearing that string. Now listen to what happens when I add the bass distortion track back in.
Settle down, it'll all be clear. Don't pay no mind to the demons, they fill you with fear.
You hear kind of that clicking sound kind of come back in, that percussive element, and that's really what we were going for with this. So let me solo that distortion track for you. So yeah, on its own does not sound good, but it's not supposed to sound good on its own. So when it's blended back with the original bass track, it really just adds that top end that allows it to cut through and gives it more of that percussive element along with the low end. So that was how we recorded the bass. Nothing super complicated, but really just wanted that low end and also the percussive elements on it as well. So the next instrument that we have is the acoustic guitar. And a lot like the bass, it's not very complicated. It's just two mics, but I recorded this one a little bit differently because I mic'd it in mid-side mode, which is, it's a stereo miking technique. One mic is figure 8 and one mic is cardioid. And what you do essentially is you record both the tracks together, and then in post you take the figure 8 mic, you duplicate it, you pan it hard left, and you flip the phase on one of the tracks. And what this allows you to do is kind of get this wide stereo image for the acoustic guitar. But the great thing about it is when you collapse the mix to mono, those wide mics cancel each other out and you're left with just that singular leftover mic. So it's a really great way to have your acoustic guitars translate into mono as well. Great for iPhones or, you know, Bluetooth speakers, any other sources that may be mono. So that was the way we went about the acoustic. Let me show you what that sounds like. Now listen to what happens when I collapse it and fold it to mono. So obviously the stereo width goes away, but what happens is you're just left with that singular mic left over, so you don't really feel like you're losing the acoustic guitar when you collapse it down to mono. And it's a huge problem, stereo miking, and just having all sorts of phase problems and trying to figure out that later on. This is just a nice, clean way to get a wide acoustic that'll translate really well into mono. But other than that, there was nothing really crazy about it. I used my ART Pro MPA2 mic preamp, which has a mid-side configuration built in, which is really nice, and that's why I was able to just record it in like that. And it's really simple. It's just a little bit of EQ on it, a little bit of compression, and it's just some limiting to catch those loud, the loud strums that come in later on in the song. And that's really it. Nothing too crazy. Now, as far as the vocals go, again, pretty simple. It's just 3 tracks. We recorded all the vocals with the 47 mic into the Manley reference core preamp. You know, a little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression on the way in. Nothing crazy. But one of the cool things that I like about this recording is some of the effects we put on the background vocals. So normally if we just listen to all the vocals in solo, they sound like this.
Settle down, it'll all be clear.
So they sound pretty good. But listen to what happens when I take away these 2 plugins. Take a listen.
Settle down, it'll all be clear.
You hear it just kind of collapse and fold down in a little bit. It's because these plugins are really enhancing the stereo image of the vocals. Let me play these 2 background vocals for you real quick and show you. So these are the vocals without the effects.
Settle down, it'll all be clear.
They don't sound bad or anything, but they just sound a little flat. But listen to what happens when we add these on.
Settle down, it'll all be clear.
So they shoot out to the sides and pan. But what this plugin is doing is really cool. It's Waves PS22 split stereo. I don't know. I love it on background vocals because it really just, what it does is it spreads out the frequencies. You can see right around here at 512, everything above 512 is starting to get panned to the right. Everything underneath 512 is moving to the left, and then you can see it kind of comes back up here. And what it does is it just kind of takes a mono vocal and kind of just spreads it without sounding totally unnatural. So it's a really, really cool plugin just to put on your background vocal. So let me show you again kind of what it sounds like. This is with.
Settle down, it'll all be clear.
And this is without.
Settle down, it'll all be clear.
With.
Settle down, it'll all be clear.
So, I mean, it just really adds to the fullness of the sound. And again, we have the wider vocals kind of with the frequencies panned out, and then we have the mid-side acoustic. And all of a sudden, our mix of just 3 instruments, really, vocals, bass, and acoustic, is starting to sound like this big, wide
Settle down, it'll all be clear. Don't pay no mind to the demons, they fill you with fear.
And that's really it. A little bit of reverb on the vocals, and I put a little bit of reverb on the bass just to kind of give it some more depth. And other than that, a few plugins on the master fader. We have the Slate virtual tape machine, which I love. It just kind of adds this thickness. Little EQ here from Iosis. Sounds great. Just pulling out a little bit of just under 200 and a little bit of 500. And then just a spectrum analyzer just to make sure I'm not going too crazy with anything. And that's it. I mean, I'm running the mixes through my Coleman summing mixer into the SSL Fusion, adding some harmonic distortion there, some little bit more stereo imaging, some EQ and compression, and that's about it. So it's a pretty straightforward song, but we really, really like the way that that it turned out. And if you guys haven't had a chance to listen to it, I really suggest that you take a listen. And I'm sure there will be a link somewhere up above or, down below. So I hope you guys can take a listen to it. And thanks again, guys, for hanging out and kind of seeing how we do some of our recordings and whatnot. So hopefully you guys like this and we can do more of it in the future. And until then, I'll see you guys later.